What's up, everybody? I hope everyone's having a super highly successful day. You're watching the Growing AU show, but you may notice that things look a little bit different around here today. It's because we're not being as formal today. I mean, if you watch our main series where we break down stocks and tell you about the best places to put your money in the stock market, then you know in those ones, formal, wearing a suit, we're dressing it up. But today is a little bit different. You're actually watching the first episode of Financial Freedom Fridays. Let's be honest, there's so much more to personal financial freedom, to building wealth, than just the stock market. There's so much more that we have to take into account. There's so many other factors and ways that we have to learn to manage our money to use it best and most effectively. And that's what we're going to be talking about in these Financial Freedom Fridays. Different ways to be managing our money that is outside the stock market that we can be using to better improving our chances and rate at which we are going to achieve financial freedom. So the thing that we're going to be talking about today is, in my opinion, perhaps one of the most important things when it comes to your personal financial freedom. It's like, honestly, I think probably the first step that we all need to achieve, and that is the $1,000 emergency fund. Before you're asking, you start thinking, I don't need a $1,000 emergency fund. What is this guy talking about? Let's all just calm down, okay? Let's think about this through here, okay? A lot of us, when it comes to personal financial freedom, we want to get to a point where we're managing an excess of money that allows us to live the life that we want to live, help others, leave the world a better place, be philanthropic, do what we want to do, right? But here's my thought, okay? A lot of us would love to be millionaires, right? We want to have millions and millions of dollars to use for good. But how are you ever going to manage $1 million if you first can't manage $1,000? $1,000 in managing that is what's going to give you the insurance, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit today, to start taking some more risks. With higher risk, we know comes the possibility of higher reward. But the first thing we have to do is build up what I'm going to call our financial insurance base. So what is an $1,000 emergency fund? Well, as it may sound, an $1,000 emergency fund is simply $1,000 of cash. Now, it could also be in a bank account, so it can be on a card, but it's basically just $1,000 of cash that is available to you at any moment, at all times. So should some unexpected thing happen in life, and let's be honest, we know how much that happens. Forbid that you get into a car accident, maybe the basement starts to flood, you have unexpected medical emergencies you got to pay for. There's so many things that could happen in life that require us to have money at the ready. Now, for a lot of people, believe it or not, 60% of Americans could not front an $1,000 emergency, and I was in that boat for a very long time. I could not front a $1,000 emergency. I couldn't front a $20 emergency, and that's something we can talk about later. But when I found out about that, I knew that I had to change things. I had to make a change in the way that I was conducting myself financially. The thing about the $1,000 emergency fund is that when these emergencies come up, if we can't front it, it requires us to take out loans, requires us to go on credit, and credit can be a great thing when managed properly. But when we're not the ones that are calling the shots on that, when we're using it because we don't have any other choice, it's the potential of putting us all in a really bad situation. The $1,000 emergency fund is going to make sure that we never have to take out unnecessary loans or accrue unnecessary debt, because we have a buffer put in place to help us get through unforeseen financial emergency. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I understand that. I understand that I don't want to accrue debt, or I don't want to take out loans I don't necessarily need to take out for unforeseen financial emergencies. But how do I start? I mean, how do I start, saving up an emergency fund? Well, first of all, do you have a job? That's the really first question. I mean, I know there's probably a lot of people on this channel that maybe have more of the entrepreneurial spirit, but let's be honest, money has to start coming from somewhere to start funding our other adventures. And entrepreneurial is risky. You have to have some form of money coming in, right? And you can read all the different books on, this percentage of your money goes to investments, this percent goes to expenses, this percent to wants. We're not really going to focus on that too much here today, because $1,000 in the grand scheme of things is not an unreasonable amount of money for a lot of people to save up. And I believe the $1,000 emergency account can easily be set up in under a year. Really what it's going to come down to is you have to look at your income. You have to see, okay, how much my income is coming in? How badly do you want to have this emergency account set up? And then most importantly, okay, so now that I know that, how much income do I have to take out percentage-wise per paycheck that's going to allow me to hit my financial goal, right? We have to decide how much we're going to be taking out consistently from every single paycheck. So maybe it's 25%, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5%. It all depends on how much you're making, what your other expenses are. So we're not going to delve into that super deep today. My point here for you is setting up an $1,000 emergency fund is very easy. It just requires the discipline to consistently take out the same percentage amount from every single paycheck until you hit your goal. Here's the great part about a $1,000 emergency fund. You take out $50 a week to put in this emergency fund, you're there in 20 weeks. 20 weeks is such a short period of time. It's less than half a year and you have $1,000 saved up. It's going to help us, not take on unnecessary loans. It's going to help us not take on unnecessary debt. We know that the best way to save it up is to consistently take the same proportion out of every single paycheck. Once we've accounted for, expenses and other things that we need to do like that, pay ourselves first. So we know that, okay, paycheck comes in, I need 20%, boom, put that in the emergency fund and you're good to go. Then you can pay your expenses and then your wants and so on and so forth. Here's why I think the emergency fund is so necessary, okay? When you know that you could be driving down the road and financially float a flat tire, you're driving down the street and you know that if for whatever reason I were to accidentally get clipped by a car or something like that, I know that I can financially afford to have that fixed. What that's going to allow you to do is start to really make some slightly more risky but also slightly higher returning financial decisions. For example, if you know that I have $1,000 saved up at all times for some unforeseen financial emergency, but now I still have this 20% that I'm taking out of every single paycheck. Well, I can just go, yeah, you could just go spend that at the store, or now maybe it's time to get started in the stock market. And as I said, we have a whole series on that, as well as a free 8-page ebook linked below that lets you get started in the stock market. But now you can start making some of those more moves. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to start funding your project. Now that you know that you have $1,000 saved up, if for some reason something were to go wrong, you can start taking that 20% out of your paycheck now and start funding your project. Basically gives you a baseline that's going to allow you to take some slightly more risky moves because you know that you have a safety net put in place already. This is actually something that is referred to in the insurance world as moral hazard. What moral hazard is essentially saying, and it's a problem for insurance companies, is that people who already have insurance are more likely to be reckless with the things that they have insurance against. Very simply, if you have insurance on fire damage in your home, you're more likely to light candles as compared to someone who's not. So that's a problem for insurance companies, but as individuals, we can use it to our advantage. We know that we're insured against at least a very small degree of financial fallout if for whatever reason our other investments were to kind of kick back, or if we had something we needed to immediately pay for and our other money was tied up either in the stock market or in businesses or whatever else we were doing. We know that we have a little bit of insurance and assurance that we have money ready to go should some unforeseen financial event unfold, just as responsible, but a little bit more risky with our money. And as we said before, higher risk is normally directly related to higher returns. So it gives you a little bit more freedom on that front and allows you to start putting your money in other areas because you're already taking out 20%. Now just kind of use the snowball debt effect, but do it the opposite way, right? Now we're going to put it into another money-making area, be that stocks or businesses, so on and so forth. Really, the thing about the $1,000 emergency account is it's probably one of the most freeing things. When you hit that day that you get to go to your bank and you get to put $1,000 in the bank and actually sit back and say that I did it, it's one of the best feelings in the world. It's one of the first steps to financial freedom. It's one of the first steps to financial discipline, and being able to cross that milestone off your list is one of the first steps to really taking your life in your own hands, at least financially, and it's a beautiful thing to do. I highly recommend that to anybody who has not already set up a $1,000 emergency fund. The amount of freedom that is going to be placed onto you and the amount of weight that is going to be lifted off of your shoulders, the amount of burden and worry is insurmountable. So definitely, if you can float it, find a way to consistently take the same amount out of every paycheck to help you build a emergency fund. If you like what you heard today, this has been the Growing EU Show. I definitely appreciate a like and a subscribe. It helps me keep growing and making more videos like this one. If you're interested in the stock market, as I said before, we do have a free 8-page ebook. All you got to do is join our email list that is listed down below in the description. Definitely feel free to check it out. I appreciate everyone that tuned in for this first episode of Financial Freedom Fridays, where we are finding the best way to achieve financial freedom together. Thanks for watching today, guys, and we'll catch you next time.